It was the 10th day of the Kurukshetra war. The Kauravs were in control. They had the larger army. It was 100 Kaurav brothers against 5 Pandavs. Their 11 Akshauhinis against the 7 in the Pandav army. And at the center of it all was Kaurav's greatest asset, their general, Bhishm. Wise, unshaken, and relentless. He was the kind of general both sides would kill to have. And Duryodhan had him. But what Duryodhan didn't know was that Bhishm wasn't just his greatest strength. He was his first mistake too. Bhisma was the obvious choice, the most feared, most experienced, and the only one capable of holding the Pandavs back. But Bhisma came with terms, and that's where the mistake began.
The sons of Pandu are as dear to me as you are. I shall not slay them.
The Pandavs were as dear to him as the Kauravs. He agreed to fight, but he made it clear that he would not kill the Pandav brothers. For Duryodhan, that wasn't a small caveat. It meant his general would never finish the war. The doubt was already there, fueled constantly by Karn, who had long accused Bhisma of being biased towards the Pandavs. That tension wasn't new. Even before the war began, Bhisma had publicly dismissed Karn as only half as capable as a chariot warrior, an Ardharathi. The rift was already in place. And once Bhisma took command, it turned into a consequence, and Karn refused to fight under him. Duryodhan entered the war without his most loyal warrior because of his own choice of general. Even in battle, the problem held. Bhisma destroyed armies, but not the Pandavs. The leadership remained intact, while Duryodhan's side took the losses. On the 10th day, Bhisma didn't just fall. He exposed how he could be defeated. He refused to strike Shikhandi, who was once a woman, bound by his own principles, and the Pandavs used it to bring him down. Duryodhan had chosen the strongest general on the field, but one who wouldn't fight his war, wouldn't align with his allies, and wouldn't finish the enemy. After Bhishma fell, Duryodhan needed stability. Karna suggested Dron, the guru of all warriors. The logic was that Arjun would never strike his own teacher. It made perfect sense. But the same flaw remained. Dron's loyalties were divided. His affection for Arjun was known, and like Bhishma, he too set a boundary. He would fight, but not kill the Pandavs. Duryodhan couldn't afford this limitation again, so he forced a strategy.
Bring me Yudhishthir Guru Dron. Capture him, and I'll end this war.
Dron agreed, but only if Arjun was drawn away from the battlefield. And that condition stalled everything. As long as Arjun remained, the plan failed. The Pandavs knew this loophole and protected it. This made Duryodhan's distrust deepen, and he kept accusing him of holding back, of showing mercy to the enemy. And it created friction. A commander constantly questioned, but never fully trusted. Finally, Dron fell to a weakness that Duryodhan was well aware of, his unrelenting love for his own son. And on the 15th day, the enemy exploited this weakness with a simple lie.
Ashwathama is dead! The elephant is dead.
The moment Dron believed it to be true, he dropped his weapons. That was the cost. Duryodhan chose a master of war, but one bound by conditions, divided in loyalty, and vulnerable at the core. After Bhishma and Dron, Duryodhan turned to the one man he truly trusted, Karn. Suggested by Ashwathama, he was everything the previous two were not. Loyal, aggressive, and shared the same hatred for Pandavs as Duryodhan himself. Duryodhan didn't just appoint him, he placed the weight of the entire war on him. But by then, Karn was already diminished, a shadow of what Duryodhan believed him to be. His natural armor and earrings were gone. His weapon, Vasavi Shakti, already spent on Ghatotkacha, and his curses were closing in. His guru, Parshuram's curse that his knowledge would fail him, and the Brahman's curse that his chariot wheel would sink at the worst moment. Duryodhan chose him as his final weapon, ignoring the fact that he was hoping for the hopeless. Then came the miscalculation. To match Arjun's charioteer Krishna, Duryodhan forced Shalya to be Karn's charioteer. Shalya never accepted Karn. Instead of supporting him, he kept praising Arjun and undermining Karn throughout the battle. Even within his own camp, Karn never had full backing. Bhishm had already despised him, and senior Kauravs like Kripacharya and Ashwathama never truly aligned with him. The command didn't unite, it carried forward the same fractures. In the final clash on the 17th day, everything converged. The wheel sank, the memory failed, and Karn stood exposed.
I failed you, my king. Please forgive your loyal friend.
Not the invincible warrior Duryodhan believed in, but one already stripped of his advantages. Duryodhan had placed the war on his closest ally. He was loyal, but broken. Yet, Duryodhan depended on him, and that was his third mistake. After Karn fell, the Kaurav army collapsed into despair. In a midnight council, Ashwathama proposed Shalya as the final commander. Highborn, skilled, and proven in battle. Duryodhan accepted. He formally installed him, hoping to restore order in a broken army. But Shalya was never truly his. He was the maternal uncle of Nakul and Sahadev, and before the war had even begun, he had already made another commitment to Yudhishthir that Duryodhan wasn't aware of. He had agreed to weaken Karn when the moment came, and he did. And Duryodhan would never know of this. By the time Shalya took command, the damage was already done. The army was reduced to fragments. Only Kripacharya, Kritvarma, and Ashwathama remained as prominent warriors. There was no structure left to lead. And the Pandavs did not fear him. Where Bhishm, Dron, and Karn were seen as overwhelming threats, Shalya was not.
I shall vanquish him in battle. Either he or I will prevail.
Yudhishthir closed in and killed him by midday on the 18th day. Duryodhan had chosen his final general, a man bound elsewhere, a commander too late. And that was his final mistake. If you've stayed with us this far, don't forget to follow, subscribe to the channel, and hit the like button. And do tell us if you think Duryodhan could have won the war, or was he always destined to lose? We'll see you in the comments.